celebrating 25 years of fearless, peerless journalism. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Upfront. The novel coronavirus has so far killed 9,829 people. But this year alone, over 700,000 people have already died because of alcohol. It's a serious problem and has been for a while. The FDA is one of the institutions trying to battle it here in Ghana. Their big idea? Ban celebrity or influencer endorsement of alcoholic beverages. But why? Is it even a good idea? Well, I'll tell you who doesn't think so. Ghanaian celebrities.
I just love you worth thousands of dollars with this foreign alcohol company. I didn't know in Ghana celebrities can't advertise for alcoholic beverages according to FDA.
You'll have to forgive us there. We had a bit of a technical issue with the sound, but that was going to be a report with a cross-section of Ghanaian influencers speaking on various media platforms about their displeasure with the Food and Drug Authority. Now, tonight on Upfront, we get some answers from the FDA as we learn of their grand scheme to curb alcohol consumption in Ghana. My guest on Upfront is FDA lawyer, and she, of course, is going to walk us through so much of the issues that have been plaguing the celebrities of Ghana. Cynthia Dapa Nto is our guest. Hello and good evening.
Hi, Koyu. Good evening.
Thank you so much for making the time to be with us.
Thank you for inviting the FDA.
Now, this started off as a bit of a joke. Celebrities were up in arms, very unhappy that the FDA had told them they can no longer advertise alcoholic beverages. Most people didn't care one way or another, but celebrities have big followings. And very soon, they had a lot of their following also very displeased with the FDA. I think today we can perhaps start to throw some light on what led to that decision. So let's start from there. Where from this?
Thank you, Kojo. And once again, good evening to Ghanaians and to celebrities, wherever they are. Yes. Good question. So, what led to this? I believe that most Ghanaians, if not every Ghanaian, knows about the FDA. The FDA currently works under Act 851. That's the Public Health Act. You find us drawing our mandate from Part 6 especially. And one of the things you have to do is to ensure that regulated products are approved in such a manner so as not to cause harm to the consumer. But beyond that, the legislative framework or the legislature also appreciated the fact that it is not just about approving the product. It is about how the product, for instance, is kept in the market space. It is how it is consumed, and how do you ensure that it is consumed in such a manner as not to cause harm, because there indeed is a freedom of choice. And so when you go to Section 148 of the Public Health Act, the FDA was given, for the want of using the word powers, let me say room, because people already assume that we have such unfettered powers, which we don't necessarily have. So we have the room or the opportunity to regulate by guidelines.
Right.
So Section 148 2D says that we could issue guidelines in respect of advertisements. In the first place, Section 100(2) of the law says that no person shall advertise any regulated product unless it has been vetted and approved by the authority. So that's the start of point. Now let's come down home. We are talking about alcohol.
Yeah.
Let me put on record that the FDA is not against alcohol, because the FDA itself registers alcohol. We work with them right from formulation stages up until it is put on the market. So why is the FDA saying a section of the public should not advertise alcohol? Let me say that Ghana itself as a country is part of the Committee of Nations. Ghana is affected by international rules. Ghana participates in international programs. Ghana is known to the WHO, that's the World Health Organization, and vice versa. Now, WHO, because it aims to protect health internationally, has some rules. One of such rules is what we call the SAFER measures. And let me take listeners through what SAFER stands for.
Okay.
So the S stands for to strengthen restrictions on alcohol availability.
Okay.
A, to advance and enforce drink driving measures. F, facilitate access to screening, brief interventions and treatment. E, enforce bans and comprehensive restrictions on alcohol advertising, sponsorship and promotions. R, raise prices on alcohol through excise taxes and pricing policies.
So I guess it's the E we are focusing on, right?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Now, per what I have just read, every country can take a decision one of two ways, either comprehensive or total ban or comprehensive restrictions. In Ghana, alcohol manufacture is allowed under strict supervision. Sales are allowed. And even offering for sale is a form of advertisement. So the FDA took the view that a total ban may not be the way to go.
A total ban on alcohol.
Alcohol advertisement
Okay.
may not be the immediate way to go. Comprehensive restrictions may be the way to start. So FDA started. And when it started, there was never a prohibition on celebrity advertisement. Everybody was allowed to advertise. Over time, the FDA noticed what was happening, that we were not seeing ordinary Ghanaians being used for the advertisement. We were seeing persons that we deemed to be well-known persons. And so the FDA had to take the position that because such persons possess a measure of influence on the Ghanaian, especially the young and the vulnerable, it was necessary to ensure that those persons who the law intends to protect are protected. It was for this reason that the FDA ruled that adverts could go on, but not by well-known persons. This is the genesis. Now, Kojo, before I go further, let me mention an incident that took place in this country in the year 2010. I think it was sometime in August of 2010. And a group calling themselves Consumer Protection Agency had to write to one of the manufacturing companies, Guinness Ghana, protesting the use of Ghanaian footballers on billboards. The group were incensed. One of their reasons was that these are persons who have a certain positive influence on the youth. Young boys and girls will watch them, they get excited, and so they would want to behave like them. So when we have billboards showing these persons trying to endorse a product, the group felt that it was wrong. The GFA followed up, and Guinness had to pull this down. That was 2010. Footballers are well-known persons. Indeed, if there are any well-known persons in Ghana, it should be footballers. So their right was taken away from them as far back as 2010. At the time when those rights were taken, there was no person going up in arms against the FDA or the Consumer Protection Agency or any state authority for that matter. Now, come down to 2015 thereabouts, when the FDA says, let there be sanity, then certain persons go up in arms. We are of the opinion that if footballers were prevented or prohibited and we never heard a word, they acted in the right spirit expected of citizens of Ghana. We are surprised currently at what is happening. I hope I've said enough for now.
You've said a lot, and it certainly allows us to now probe a bit further. So you gave this great example of 2010 and the Guinness advert, where a specific advert or company was reported to the FDA.
Not the FDA, the Football Association.
That's right.
Yes.
So was it the FDA that stepped in to remove the advert?
No.
The Football Association
by itself.
Very good. All right. Now, that was a case of a specific advert being reported to an authority, which then took action.
Good.
Is there anything that would stop the FDA from doing exactly that, taking specific adverts as they come up? assessing them on their merit and saying, okay, well, this one we think is harmful, so this one has to come down. That one seems to be fine, it can go ahead. Why not do that? Why a blanket ban on all class of people known as influencers? Why that?
Good question, Koyu. FDA on a daily basis would sit and vet adverts before they are even allowed to air. So the part of your question that says, why not on a case-by-case basis, already been done. Okay, so we have all sorts of persons who are put out in adverts saying all sorts of things. You have a group of persons, FDA officers, and then people from the Advertisers Association of Ghana, because we believe that they are stakeholders. They sit in on our advertisement meetings, and we will jaw and come to a decision. So that is done already. Now your question is, why a blanket ban? We do not think that it is a blanket ban.
But
Because
no celebrity in this country can advertise any alcoholic drink as per FDA's directive. Am I right?
interestingly, FDA never mentions celebrities.
You use
FDA
influencers,
mentions
right?
well-known persons.
Well-known persons.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, for the purposes of educating our viewership, let me read what the FDA says, or sees a well-known person to be. It says, includes any person who arouses sufficient interest in society. This may include historical, political, religious, academic, cultural figures, as well as celebrities and sports figures. So you will notice that for us, celebrities are just a part of persons we deem to be well-known persons. So in this area, we said political persons. Nobody is up in arms. They also have a right to earn a certain kind of income from advertisement. We said historical persons. We said religious and academicians, cultural figures. Nobody's doing that. So our question probably is, why would a section of society rise up in arms? We'll not see what the thrust of FDA's mission is. Now, let me put this on record before I answer. You see, FDA doesn't exist by itself. FDA is only an extension of government. So the government of Ghana owes the people of Ghana a duty to protect them. These people include children. So you go into the Constitution of Ghana, and I think Article 21, the government owes the children a duty of protection. How would the government be able to protect all children? By ensuring that there are state institutions who are mandated to act in a certain way. It is known, research has shown, that advertisement and alcohol advertisement in particular does have a certain impact on children. There is this research, I would bring it to your attention as we go along, but there was a study done in the Volta region, just the Volta region, and it showed that children or young persons between the ages of 14 and 25 years consume alcohol. Now, the reasons included peer pressure, advertisement, and a few others. Advert ranked number 2. The question we ask ourselves in the FDE is this: even though peer pressure appears to be number 1, is it not possible that that young person who is able to marshal his friends to drink was first influenced by an advert?
Right. So based on information like this, FDA made this decision. But I have to ask you, if you recognize that adverts is the number 2 reason influencing these young people in the Volta region to drink alcohol, advertising alcohol is still permitted. It's just celebrities that you have banned. So how do you know that you've even addressed the problem? How do you know that these young people are not still being influenced by these adverts in the absence of celebrities?
Fantastic question, Kojo. So regulation is on the continuum. So you start from 0 and then you progress, right? And you regulate for some people, for the benefit of society. Now we are getting feedback from society that, you know what, you appear to be doing something good. It may just not be enough. So with all the issues that have been raised, we have stepped back to look at the way forward. We feel that you may be right, that the way to go may probably not be what we are doing today, the comprehensive restriction, just a total ban. And why do I say so? As far back as early 70s in Europe, in the Western world, a lot of research abounds where there has been a constant push for the total ban of adverts. So you go to Sweden, you go to Norway, you name them, there's no advertisement. We thought that we should work with everybody to progress there. But we sit back and we realize that the way to go is a total ban. Why do I say this? We have interacted with our stakeholders. We have had colleagues in the public service come to us with concerns, and of course parents. They mention, for instance, there are billboards. So you say, my child should not sit behind TV and watch an ad. And yet when I'm driving my child to school, they are reading all of these things because they're learning. So we come to the point, you can't take billboard out and then say radio or say TV. So the way to go is total ban. So now we are deciding that that may be the way to go. And it is not because FDA decided that, but there is what we call the National Alcohol Policy, passed in December 2016. It aims to address some of these concerns. And it says, it identifies that it is important to control adverts. I just want to read a portion of it. Once I start with you, it appears I'm losing it, but I found it, yeah? It says, let me just read a portion of it for the benefit of our viewers. It says that scientific evidence has proven that before the age of 25 years, the human brain is still undergoing development. Then I'll jump and say that this, amongst other reasons, is why people less than 25 years old are more prone to risk-taking behaviors, like the use of psychoactive substances leading to addiction. This also explains why persons 25 years and below are particularly vulnerable to alcohol and drug abuse, and why exposure to alcohol and other psychoactive drugs before this critical time of their lives may cause future substance issues. So like I'm saying, there's a policy objective to move away from even this comprehensive advert to total ban. So it's not the FDA, a group of persons paid by the taxpayers who will not think deep enough, who will not research a little bit enough, who think that they can sit there with unfettered powers and do what they like. No, like I started saying, we are just an extension of state. The state takes the view that the human beings are precious to them, especially the young and vulnerable. So do this, and we are going to do it. Right. So having heard all of you, we may just progress to a total ban.
Is this something that is actually happening? The FDA is going to pursue a total ban of advertising of alcohol?
I would say yes, because as we speak now, there are stakeholders working on the alcohol regulation, which is a follow-up from this policy. And you know that it is advised internationally that in enacting regulations, you go steadily and progressively because there are changes internationally. So I think it's been in the process for the past 18 months, and we're taking views and advice and comments from sorry, I touched my face. Please, viewers, do not touch your face. I just did the wrong thing. Yes. So yes, so we are, at the moment, we had actually expanded on the comprehensive ban, but it's only in draft. So having heard all the views, we think it is in the interest of Ghanaians that there should be a total ban of alcohol adverts. In any case, it won't be the first regulated product. Right. As we speak today, tobacco is totally banned from advertisement. It has not stopped persons from smoking, but what it has done is to not expose young persons and even adults from smoking. Beyond that, there are graphic health warnings. So in the draft I was talking about, the stakeholders were introducing graphic health warnings on alcoholic products as well, basically.
That's interesting. Now, I want to show you this because my next question is about how broadly you consult in coming to such a decision, which is a big decision. So I hope we've got that clip ready now of the celebrities and their complaints about being banned from advertising alcohol. Can we do we have that ready? Good. Let's see it now.
I just lost a deal worth thousands of dollars with this foreign alcohol company. I didn't know in Ghana celebrities can't advertise for alcoholic beverages according to FDA. Like seriously, small food we go chop to, you won't take from our mouth. GH celebs, wake up, FDA, left ban. Hashtag #ShayGang.
My opinion then, no, I'll say so for now is I don't want to go into details.
No, I understand it to me
But
that
if you want to understand what I wrote, I was trying to say, you know, it's not fair, say, you know, Mr. Na, everything advertise alcohol, but then a group of people, like let's say artists, and like they are stopping us from doing business and getting, you know, money from these kind of avenues.
Everything ready, say no one sign up. They go check out, they say, they put ban on that thing because we, the celebrities in Ghana, kiddies they watch we and through we, the kiddies go they drink and sing, so.
We're so sorry. I mean, there clearly is a problem with the audio there, but no doubt you get the general idea. Celebrities were very unhappy with this ban and clearly didn't understand it. That's because the FDA didn't explain it to them, did you?
That's interesting. Now, when FDA is doing its work, it does broad stakeholder consultations. In fact, before the broad stakeholder consultations, it would first identify who the persons who would directly or indirectly be affected. So in this question and from this clip, what I see is this, that there is a section of the public calling themselves or who purport to be celebrities who do not understand or maybe understand but do not accept the position of the FDA. Did we consult them? My answer would be yes and no. We did consult some of them.
Which of them?
I wish I could name names.
I'm sure you can.
But I would rather not name names. But what I would say is this.
Was it a secret meeting you had?
It can never be because the FDA does not hold secrets. Of course, we are not a secret society.
So you can tell us who you met with.
What I will tell you is this. First and foremost, these section of the public are not our direct stakeholders. We regulate a certain section of the public who may be manufacturers or importers. These are the persons who will now sit back and say, we want to promote our products. We want to create brand awareness in the mind of Ghanaians. Who can best do it for us? Then they will identify Kojo, or they will of course not come to me because I am not an influencer in that sense, yes? So we went to the people who would sit back and take a decision. They would want to pay, could you say, somebody said $20,000, right? You guys are rich. $20,000 so that you can create brand awareness in the public's mind. We went to them. Some came with their celebrities.
Like
so, oh, you want me to mention names?
I think it's, unless it was a secret
meeting.
It
wasn't a secret meeting,
then
but one thing I want to avoid doing is to mention one and not the other. Because I will not remember all.
It doesn't
but
have to be
I can tell you one thing. One who came is quite popular, and I think he felt that he was best hit because he was not happy. But I guess one of the reasons why he came there was because we had heard, it was your station, I think it was on JoyNews, one of your your news people had gone to Kasua, a part of Kasua, I think, and had interviewed school-going children, what professions they wanted to engage in future when they grew up. And one child said, I want to be like Eziban. Okay? Now, what does Eziban do? I don't want to, every Ghanaian who watches Eziban knows that. It was a cause of concern. In fact, we had members of the public writing to us because complaining, we don't want our children to act in this fashion.
This is Mr. Jokoto you're speaking about.
I think if he was Eziban or is Eziban, then it will be him. So what I'm saying is that some of these persons came with their brand ambassadors. They were in
Mr.
the meeting.
Jokoto was there.
Yes. Has come to FDA, has engaged with the FDA largely to change the rule.
Right.
But FDA could not change the rule because the rule wasn't even about FDA. It was for the people of Ghana, posterity. The Constitution requires that decisions are taken in the national interest and for the benefit of the yet unborn. Right. So FDA has to push that agenda. Okay. So we did consult some people. Some were young then. Some of the clip I saw at the time FDA was doing these things, they were not even in the media space. So maybe constant and continuous stakeholder engagement may help.
All right, let's talk a bit more about this when we come back from this break. Our guest, of course, is FDA's lawyer, and she's explaining to us that what led to the decision to ban celebrities from advertising. But it looks like that's only the tip of the iceberg in the grand scheme of the FDA's plan to reduce alcohol consumption in Ghana. Stay with us when we return. Even more on Upfront.
Deal worth thousands of dollars with this foreign alcohol company. Didn't know in Ghana, celebrities can't advertise for alcoholic beverages according to FDA. Like seriously, small food we go chop to, you won't take from our mouth? GH celebs, wake up. FDA left that ban. Hashtag Shay Gang.
My opinion then, no. I'll say so for now is, I don't want to go into details.
No, I understand it to me.
But if you want to understand what I wrote, I was trying to say, you know, it's not fair, say, you know, Papa your Tnamin Chain can advertise Mr. Na, everything advertise alcohol, but then a group of people like, let's say, artists, and like they are stopping us from doing business. And getting, you know, money from these kind of avenues.
Everything ready, you say no one sign up. They go check out, they say they put ban on that thing because we, the celebrities in Ghana, kiddies they watch we and through week the kiddies go they drink and sing. So FDA.
An influencer there.
Big one,
yes.
Shutter movement.
Indeed. Are you a member?
I'm not, but I follow the Shutter movement.
Well, the reason why this is important is because in order for anything to have a buy-in, it's always helpful if it's understood. Correct. When you tell people to do something they don't understand, they naturally rebel. If they understand it, you can very easily get them to go along. So, is the FDA interested in simply passing this law, or are they interested in making it work? And if you're interested in making it work, as I suspect you are, how are you going to ensure that it is understood by those it affects?
Wonderful. Thank you, Kojo. So you have answered the first part of the question. We are not only interested in passing a law, we are interested in making it work, because it is in that we can measure our own success. How do we want to do it? Usually when you are developing legislation, you have what we call the impact assessment. And it includes inviting your stakeholders. So we would include our stakeholders. I think that at the time the Ministry of Health launched the policy, stakeholders were invited and they were part of the process.
Manufacturers, advertisers, media houses, they were all invited importers, for that.
I would say yes, because there was a list. As to whether they all attended, I cannot guarantee that. But what I'm saying is that going forward, I mentioned a draft regulation. You would have to subject it to stakeholder consultation. In fact, it is something that Parliament requires. If you send any bill or regulation to Parliament, one of the first steps or hurdles to cross is, have you engaged the relevant stakeholders? So what I want to say is this: if in the past it has appeared from the FDA's conduct or work that it had not engaged all of its stakeholders, Then we are telling the Ghanaian public that we would engage all stakeholders. And we are asking, when you are invited, please come so that we can have a meaningful law. Because as I've already said, it is not for the FDA that we are doing this. It is for Ghana, for the future of Ghana.
Right. So we want to learn a bit more about what this law might look like, the sort of problems you would like the law to solve. Okay. So that would inform what would be sort of the content of that law. But before that, this is about alcohol.
Yes.
Sometimes it's necessary to remind ourselves of why it is a problem around the world.
Good.
Watch this. Yeah. Alcohol, considered to be far more dangerous than almost every other substance except tobacco to the human body. It kills. Last year, it killed over 3 million people around the world. I want you to wrap your head around that. Imagine wiping out 10% of Ghana. Yeah. Alcohol, that's what it can do. Now, what's the solution? How do you solve this problem? Well, every institution and organization probably has its role to play. The FDA believes that by banning the advertising of alcohol, they can play a role. So let's start to explore what this law might look like. First of all, what are the specific problems you are hoping that the law will solve?
That's a very smart way of getting a glimpse of the law before our first stakeholder engagement. And so to answer you, I'll tell you what the focus of the policy is, because we are a product of the law and the policy aims at doing something. So it says that, I don't know why, anytime you ask the question and the pages disappear, but let me read this for you. So one of the things that the law seeks to do is to control manufacture.
Right.
You will notice that the local manufacture of alcohol in Ghana today is a problem. So we want to get to the bottom of that. So we have heard arguments, oh, you guys are always after these group of manufacturers and not the local ones. We would want to touch on that. That's one. Then
so the akpeteshie and
exactly.
The palm wine
and the pitos and the brukutus and the atsemudes and the bitters are regulated, to surprise you to know.
Okay.
It's only the adverts that are a problem, because FDA does good work with the regulation. So what you consume is actually quite good if you consume moderately. It's how it is advertised as being the one-stop shop for everything. You want to be enhance your prowess as a man, go to the bitters. You want to eat well, go to the bitters. You want to be a beautiful woman, go to the bitters. They are all not acceptable. And no matter how hard the FDA works, you find unscrupulous persons putting this message across. So we want to regulate that. And that would be solved by having a comprehensive ban. So we'll go into the manufacture, the adverts. Billboards, for instance, are an issue. At the moment, FDA regulated by saying that no billboard should be sited 200 meters close to first and second cycle institutions. That does not appear to be sufficient, especially if you find that we have persons as young as 17 years going to the university. Per the definition of the Constitution, they are minors. So we have to protect even up to the university level. So Kojo, we would invite you to our stakeholder engagement. So let me just say this. Then when you come to the biggest, you get the wider picture. But these are some of the forays we'd want to make with the alcohol bill.
Okay, now we were talking about stakeholders earlier, and of course we mentioned some of the obvious ones: the manufacturer, the advertiser, the media houses. But there are other stakeholders, those who receive sponsorship from the alcoholic beverage companies, and that's almost everyone. They sponsor all kinds of things, from educational activities to sporting activities to entertainment events. They sponsor everything. Even some state activities are sponsored by the alcoholic beverage companies. So are they going to, they are obviously going to be affected, but are they going to be consulted in the formulation of these laws?
Oh, they would obviously be consulted. Like I mentioned, this is not an FDA agenda. This is a government of Ghana agenda. The FDA is only an agency of state, so it can only prosecute the government's mandate. And like I mentioned, in order to pass regulations, you need parliament, the representatives of the people, and they require at all times that you consult the people. But it will interest you to know, Tukojo, that we have a lot of parliamentarians concerned with the harmful effects of alcohol. You have persons complaining. Go to my constituency, as early as 8 a.m., you find young people drunk. This is pathetic. This is something that must touch the heart of every Ghanaian, because you see, that's the future heart surgeon who is drunk and will not go anywhere. That's the future president, probably. Recently, I heard that there's a prophecy that between the next 8 years, between now and the next 8 years, there will be a female president. I don't know how true that is. But then, really, that may be a future president we are losing. Most importantly, it showed us the ill effects of alcohol. It's a big issue on fertility. So there's a good reason why we should consult. So we are not only going to consult the persons who benefit directly, we'll consult even the general public, because they are the persons who suffer the most. If somebody's child watches an advert and so therefore begins to consume, it becomes a family problem, which grows into a community problem, and then a national problem. And so we need such guardians, such parents to also sit there, because we cannot do the law atop their heads. They necessarily must be there to say, government through FDA, we are applauding you, or government through FDA, you're overstretching it. So basically, we would consult everyone.
Now, the tobacco industry went through this process,
yes,
at some point in its evolution, and not only did they ban the advertising of tobacco in many countries across the world, but they also spent money advertising against the use of tobacco. Is the FDA going to do that? Are you going to invest funds in placing adverts that tell people the harmless effects of alcohol and discourage them from consuming it?
Good question, Kojo. The answer is the FDA is already investing funds in discouraging the harmful use of alcohol and in doing public education. I think the question should be, will the state put in more funds to protect its own? For the FDA, we will do our possible best, including work with donors and CSOs who come in to support us. But would the state itself, on whose behalf we are acting, push in enough money? Beyond the state are the citizens. So my question to the media, starting from multimedia, because I'm sitting here, is, would you, or what would you do to ensure success?
Well, we have a platform. If you buy airtime, we'll place your advert.
But this is where the problem is. What is your corporate social responsibility? It includes giving the FDA free airtime to come and talk. See, my work is ended, but I'm here. That is part of the work.
Exactly. We're not charging you for your time with us today. So yes, you're right about that. Let's wrap up with this question. You've already mentioned a couple of things that are not going well. For example, you've talked about the fact that in spite of the existing regulations, people still do false advertising.
Correct.
You've talked about the fact that people still place billboards where they shouldn't.
Correct.
So even with our existing laws, people are not complying. Why does the FDA think that if you pass a new law, that will in any way work for you when you haven't been able to enforce the existing ones?
Well, I do not agree that it is a a question of our inability to enforce existing laws. I think it is a question of the spread in the digital age. So when we had just newspapers, when we just had radios, it was easy. In fact, we had what? Radio Ghana, radio, about just 8. How many do we have today? Now, you see, and I'm glad you asked this question, because sometimes rather than the public applaud the FDA, it criticizes it. So FDA has a law that says, do not advertise alcohol. But FDA is not the regulator of media houses, for instance. There is a regulator.
So you'll have to work with partners.
In fact, the partners must rise up to their task.
I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our conversation. I want to thank you ever so much for being with us, Cecilia Dapanto. Cynthia, forgive me, my mistake. Cynthia Dapanto is the lawyer for the Food and Drugs Authority. Look out for that law, it's coming soon. I leave you with this while we await Joy News Prime. It's a little clip to help us understand why alcohol is bad. I'm so sorry, we don't have time. But thank you so much for watching. My name is Kojo Yanson. Have a good night.
one of the most commonly used and abused drugs in the world, comes in a variety of forms and does one thing quickly and well. It changes the way you feel. But to what do we owe these feelings of release and freedom? How could the ingestion of one simple substance so drastically change not only your actions, but thoughts and perception? As alcohol enters the body and makes its way to your brain, it begins to interact with your neurons or brain cells. In our previous video on marijuana, which you can click here, we explain the actions of neurons and their chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. But there are two main types of neurotransmitters that these neurons use to communicate or send electrical signals. Excitatory neurons use glutamate, while inhibitory neurons use GABA, the yin and yang, if you will. Much like the zeros and ones of a computer, these two messengers have contrasting roles. Glutamate begins a wave of excitation, while GABA not only inhibits this flow, but helps to organize and differentiate the results in your brain. And just like a computer, these signals can be combined in enormous complexity to form actions and thoughts. So how does alcohol affect these two signals? Turns out it suppresses glutamate transmission and enhances GABA transmission, so you get less excitation and more inhibition. And because glutamate sites become less effective, information flow becomes slow, and only the largest signals can